Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, it's going to be my September wrap-up. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I managed to finish and not finish in the month of September. So September was a pretty up and down month. I had some pretty low lows and some pretty high highs. And I had a bunch of really awesome rereads and then kind of some stuff in the middle that was okay. So very all over the place, but overall September was a decent month. Not the best, but I did find some new favorites. Had a couple 5-star favorites. I had some fun reread experiences. I had some disappointments of books that I was really looking forward to that really didn't pan out well for me. And we'll get to all of that in the wrap up. But for right now, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And luckily for me, and maybe for y'all, I only had one DNF. So let's just get that pesky DNF out of the way. And honestly, this was the one book that I was expecting not to DNF this month. Or I should say one of, not like I was expecting to DNF all these books. You know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. This is the third book in the Housemaid trilogy. There might be more books. I hope not. But the first two books were really good, especially the first book. 5 stars. One of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read. The sequel was very good, but kind of a copycat book. Like, it was basically the same plot, but I still really enjoyed it. This third book, been kind of putting off for a while, and I had the audiobook on hold on Libby for months and months, and it finally came in. So I was like, you know what? It's not on the plan. It's not on the docket, but go ahead and read it. And I DNF'd it like a little bit more than halfway through, because this is supposed to be a domestic thriller, but this book was basically just domestic without any of the thriller. So she wrote a domestic book. And what I mean by that is there's not really, especially in the first half, there's not really anything like thrilling about this book. Like, at least for the first two books, like, there's a lot of mystery and there's a lot of stuff going on. With this one, it's just a whole lot of nothing. And there's not really much to say other than that. And a funny thing happened to me with this book. I was reading reviews for it and kind of just spoiling myself because I really just did not give a crap. And just reading about what happens in this book, you're just like, who are these people? Like, these people are so different than the ones that we get in the first two books. Don't you hate that when, like, somebody, writes a sequel, or like maybe a movie, you see a sequel and you're like, these aren't the same characters. Like, these characters are making decisions that the characters that I know and love would not make. And I fell asleep listening to this book, just trying to give it another chance. And I woke up during a reveal, and the reveal was so stupid that I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this book. I'm done with this series. If there's a fourth one, I probably will not read it because this third book just sucked so bad. So, with all that being said, my one DNF for the month, getting rid of that. But luckily, that's the only DNF I had. But I did have a few books that were fairly disappointing that I'll talk about here. The first one I'll talk about is definitely the most disappointing, and honestly probably one of, if not the most disappointing book that I've read so far this year. And that would be Spread Me by Sarah Gailey. Now, you guys know how much I loved two of her other books, The Echo Wife, which I gave 5 stars, and Just Like Home, which was one of the best horror books I've ever read and one of the best books that I've read in 2024. Love those books to death, so I was really excited to check out her new book, Spread Me. I did not like this book. I gave it 2.5 stars for lots of reasons. Number one and foremost, I probably should have known this going in, but I didn't really read any summaries or reviews for it. This book is highly erotic, which, judging by the title, makes sense, but I probably thought like that's something that she was going to go for, but this book is just very horny, and it was not at all what I expected, and I didn't really love that aspect of it. Also, this book is very short. The audiobook that I listened to is only 5.5 hours. I think it would have been a bit more interesting if we would have gotten more just character background, character development, and just further, like, these people are in like a research lab in the desert, and I think it would have been more intriguing to learn a bit more about what they're doing, but we get such little detail that I wanted more and more of that and less of the erotic crap. And also, just this book and the story itself was just very derivative of things like The Thing, which the author does bring up a lot. They even have the characters in the book even have a thing where they're like, oh, every time you mention The Thing, you got to put money in the jar. It's just like, okay, we get it. But like, this book was just so disappointing. I was expecting to love this book, give it 5 stars. So definitely one of the more disappointing books of 2025 so far. Another book that I gave 2.5 stars to, I wasn't really expecting to like it, and I didn't really like it that much, and that would be The Gray Man by Mark Greaney. I do have a dedicated book review for this because this is Aaron's God tier level Patreon pick, and if you guys don't know, I do have a Patreon link down below. You can go support me there for as little as $1 a month, but if you want to pay $7 a month, you get God tier. You get all the additional perks, but you also get to choose 2 additional books for me to read in the calendar year, and I will read those books and do dedicated book reviews like I did for The Gray Man. However, I did not really like this book, but you can go check out that review. Basically, it's just not written for people like me. This is a book that, like, if you love action movies and you love just really macho dudes doing really macho things and war and espionage and shoot 'em ups, like, you're gonna love this book. But for me, it just wasn't written for guys like me. Like, I did not like this book. 2.5 stars. Well written for like the kind of book it is, but just not for me. Another book that I was really looking forward to that I thought was just kind of okay was Coffin Moon by Keith Rawson. And I've heard quite a few people talk about this book and this author, including Ian from Ian the Reader. And Ian normally has great recommendations, but I did not really enjoy this book as much as I thought I would. It is a vampire book, and historically, I'm not a big fan of vampires except for Fever Dream by George R. R. Martin and Salem's Lot by Stephen King. They happen to be my 2 favorite authors. Any other vampire stuff I've not really enjoyed that much, and this one just was kind of okay. I really didn't get attached to any of the characters, and I felt like the characters just were kind of flat, like a lot of flat affect, which seemed kind of crazy for all of the weird and crazy shit that was happening in this book. I wanted more of these characters to have reactions and to kind of like say what was on their mind, but like the characters just came off as very flat. Also, there are some POVs from a certain vampire. I won't like get into spoilers, but their storyline I didn't really like that much. I really just didn't like the real direction the story went in. The writing was okay, but overall, just my main complaint was that I didn't get attached to any of the characters. I will possibly try some of his other books because, you know, this could just be I don't like vampires. So I will try his other books eventually, but this one, 3 stars, fairly disappointing. Another 3-star book I had was my Patreon pick, which was chosen by Kate, I believe, and that would be Roadside Picnic by these Russian authors that I'm not going to try to pronounce. But anyway, this book was good. I wasn't really expecting to love this book, but it was okay for what it was. It's kind of like it was written in the 70s. They're by Russian authors, and this is basically about like a few years after aliens like touched down on Earth and like left a bunch of stuff behind. And we're following these people that are like in the midst of like in like looking at this area and seeing what aliens left behind or like what they touched and all that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting idea, but I just think it would have been better if we further like discovered more things, or if the author like went into more detail about these aliens and like these areas. Like, it was a really interesting concept, but I just don't think it was executed very well. And again, also, I didn't really get attached to many of the characters. A really interesting concept, but it just kind of fell flat for me. There were some interesting conversations that the characters had. The dialogue was good, and I wished some aspects of the book were more expounded on, because there's a lot of like just just stuff that like the characters are kind of going through the motions, and it's just like, I want you to focus on this, but it just didn't happen. But it was okay. It was 3 stars. It was good. I also read another new release. I think it came out maybe in August or July. I don't know, but I finally got around to it, and that would be Killer on the Road by Stephen Graham Jones. And actually, previously, a few months ago, I think in like March, he came out with another book, Buffalo Hunter Hunter. That book was very disappointing. Again, kind of vampire-y a little bit, kind of like his Native American vampire tale, and I really didn't like that book either. It gave it a generous 3 stars. This book, however, I liked a bit more. I gave it 3.5 stars. Killer on the Road. Although one of my main complaints is that it was very reminiscent of movies like The Hitcher, because this involves a character who kills people via hitchhiking and picking up hitchhikers. Although he does put his own twist on it, because all of his books kind of have his like Native American indigenous twist to them, which I very much enjoy. This one, I did like the main cast of characters. My main problem was the villain. The villain just wasn't very compelling. The book, however, was fairly well paced, and I did like the conclusion to it. Overall, this book was pretty good, but I wish the villain was a little more compelling. But this one was definitely better than his other book. So obviously, he's one of my favorite horror writers still working to this day. And I love that he's continuing to not write the same stuff over and over again. He's experimenting. Sometimes it falls flat for me, but sometimes it does work very well. I will continue to read him. This book was pretty good. 3.5 stars. Killer on the Road. And then I had a couple of 4-star books. One that was a reread for me was Kingdoms of Death by Christopher Ruocchio. And this is the 4th Sun Eater book. I'm kind of a little bit behind on Sun Eater, trying to catch up. The 4th one is very good. One of my favorites in the series. Probably still number 3 is my favorite. But this one, man, this is where, I mean, obviously I can't spoil anything, but the author really puts some characters through the ringer in this book, especially, Hadrian Marlowe. Like, good God. And this book is interesting because he originally wrote like his 4th book, which is actually books 4 and 5. They're supposed to be kind of combined, but the publisher wanted him to split the book in half and make 2 kind of smaller books. So I think his idea was to do that, but then like expound a little bit on each of them. So I think the pacing in this one suffers a little bit because of that, but overall, very good story. Hadrian Marlowe continues to be one of my favorite SFF protagonists, and overall, this book was just very depressing, which, it works out. I really do like Hadrian Marlowe's character and his journey, but man, this one, he just goes through the ringer. And I can't wait to read Ashes of Man in October during the Long Walk Readathon. That one, I honestly don't remember too much about, but it'll be my last reread before I move on to book 6 and 7, probably next month in November. But yeah, Kingdoms of Death, very good, 4 stars. My other 4-star read was Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. Now, me and Stacy had both read My Lovely Wife by the same author. Really didn't enjoy it that much. We gave it probably a generous 3 stars. It was one of those things where like we wished the last like 20% of the book was like the start of the book and like the whole book, and it just went on, and we didn't really like it that much. But the premise of this one sounded really cool. Basically, an old lady serial killer who's now retired, but something happens which makes her possibly have to kill some more people. It was just a fun time. Not perfect by any means, but it was a really fun thriller with an old lady killer. That rhymed. But anyway, Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. Very good, 4 stars. I will be checking out more of her books soon. I think I have one of them here. I do, For Your Own Good. So I will eventually check out more of her stuff. Eventually. But anyway, Too Old for This. Pretty good, 4 stars. And then we have a slew of 4.5 and 5 stars. A lot of these are rereads, but some of them are new favorites. So let's get into it. I got a couple of physical reads, actually. A lot of these have been audio. But we have Sand Kings by George R. R. Martin. And yes, I am continuing my George R. R. Martin journey of reading all of his early works. And this is one of my favorite collections by him. And it probably has his best short story, novelette, whatever you want to call it. Sand Kings is definitely really high up there. This is the short story novelette, if you will, that got George a Hugo Award, a Nebula Award, and a Locust Award. Like, this is his most awarded story, and it's fitting because the story is just really damn good. And a lot of the other stories in here are great as well. You've got The Way of Cross and Dragon, Bitter Blooms, In the House of the Worm, in the Stone City. Just some really fantastic short sci-fi horror in here. So great, 4.5 stars. Not perfect, but really good. Highly, if anything, just go check out Sand Kings. Like, the audio is free on YouTube. It's like a couple of hours long. Go check that out at least, because that is one of the best sci-fi stories ever told, in my opinion. But yeah, Sand Kings, awesome. We also have another 4.5 star reread, which would be Christine by Stephen King. And again, I do have a dedicated book review on the channel, so I'm not going to go too much in depth here. But this is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books. I do give it 4.5 stars. I think this is solidly in my top 25, possibly top 20, maybe. But it's risen a little bit after my reread. I do really love the characters, the plot, the pacing is really good. I just have one minor complaint, which is that it's kind of a weird structure. It's written in 3 parts. Part 1 is in first-person POV from Dennis's point of view, which is the best friend of Arnie. They're best friends. And then part 2, Dennis is kind of sidelined for a little bit, and then part 2 is just a slew of third-person POVs, including Dennis himself, which is just weird. And then part 3, we're going back to Dennis's first-person POV. So that's just always bothered me. That's my only real complaint. Other than that, the story is great. The characters are great. It's just a fantastic Stephen King novel. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. Fantastic, 4.5 stars. I also gave 4.5 stars to a book 5 of a fantasy series. Kind of a weird way to, whatever. It's The Spider's War by Daniel Abraham. Book 5 and the last book in the Dagger and Coin series by Daniel Abraham. Fantastic conclusion to the series, 4.5 stars. And if you guys watched my previous video of my top 10 fantasy series, this snuck in at the number 10 spot because just some of my all-time favorite fantasy characters. And I do believe that if I go back to reread it eventually down the line in a few years or so, I think it has the potential to rise even higher. It's just one of the more intriguing and interesting, well thought out fantasy series that I've ever read. And the conclusion was very good. It had one minor complaint that I can't go into because of spoilers, but overall, fantastic series, one of my all-time favorites now. And I'll end the video with 3 5-star books. One of them is a reread, but 2 of them are new favorites. So let's check them out. The first one, probably surprising no one, is George R. R. Martin and Lisa Tuttle with Windhaven. Now, I'd read this book, I think maybe even last year, or maybe even just a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. The first time I read it, I gave it 4.5 stars. The second time around, I actually gave it 5 stars. I don't really have any faults with this book. This is actually a standalone fantasy novel, and it's one of those stories where it kind of spans the whole life of a character. The prologue of Windhaven we get with a little girl named Maris, and she's like on a beach watching these flyers, as they call them, because there's a story where, if you can see from the cover here, these people fly between different islands. And I really also like when fantasy settings are kind of like islands and are archipelagos or whatever that thing is. But anyway, cool setting with all these different islands. So like I mentioned, the prologue, and then we get part 1. It's written in 3 parts. Part 1, she's kind of maybe a teenager or a younger woman. And then part 2, she's a bit older. And then part 3, she's kind of, getting up in age. So like it spans her whole life essentially. And it's just, I love when stories can do that. And it's just a really interesting tale. It's also very different than a lot of George R. R. Martin ones, because a lot of his stories and novels kind of end with a sense like not hopeful, like very disturbing and very just, not hopeful at all. But this one kind of has that air about it where it's a very hopeful story. And the character is trying to change things about, the land and their people and their customs and their traditions. Because the whole kind of point of this book is like traditions are very rigid and like they should be changed as people change. And people can kind of want to just stick with their traditions just for tradition's sake, even if it doesn't make any sense, kind of deal. So I really like the characters and the themes and the settings. Just everything about this book works perfectly. It's one of my favorite George R. R. Martin books. And yeah, I gave it 5 stars on a reread. Now we get to my 2 new favorites of the month. It's kind of hard to choose between the two, like which one's better, because they're very different from each other. But for right now, I will say my second favorite of the month is The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Frakowski. And this author has really surprised me. This is the third book that I've read by him, and basically all of his books have either been 4.5 or 5 stars. I think still my favorite is Boys in the Valley. That's just like a perfect horror book in my mind. Gothic was very good as well, 4.5 stars. This is more of a sci-fi book, actually, and I gave it 5 stars. Definitely one of my favorite sci-fi books that I've read in the past few years or so. And this one, if you could tell from the title, is all about time travel, and it has certain rules of it in time travel, if I can speak, and it has certain limitations to it. But I think those limitations kind of keep this book interesting. It's a little bit of a slow start, but you get more into it and you kind of realize what's happening and you kind of can theorize about what's happening. The character development, as always, from Philip is tremendous. I really like the characters in this one. And the ending just kind of goes into a direction that I didn't really foresee happening. But overall, thinking about this book, 5 stars. I love when sci-fi, I guess an easier way to just say this is that I don't like older sci-fi, like classic sci-fi, because it's all about the ideas and the philosophy and the science, and it has a lot less to do with plot and character. But a lot of great modern sci-fi, like this one, can blend everything together very seamlessly. And this one is a great example of that. So, Third Rule of Time Travel, 5 stars, one of the best sci-fi books that I've read in the past few years. And now we get to probably my favorite of the month, a potential top 10 book of the year for me. We'll see kind of how it lands. I've been giving a lot of books 5 stars this year. I don't know if it's just that I'm lucky or if I'm just more like I'm in a better mood or what. I don't know what's happening, but another 5-star favorite for me, my favorite read of September, I'm going to have to go with My Ex, the Antichrist by Craig DeLuey. DeLuey? I don't know. Basically, the story behind this book and why I wanted to get it, me and Stacy were kind of just randomly browsing Barnes and Noble. I think we might have had a gift card or something. And I saw this and I said, ooh, that's a catchy title. And it's got like a vinyl in the background. And then I basically read the back of it and it sold me. 1998, Lily Lawyer and Drake Morgan form a punk band. Drake inspires faith in some, fear in others. Lily is a believer. 2010, at the height of her stardom, Lily walks into a police station and confesses to a murder. Now, the band has refused to talk to the press about their rituous past, Lily's confession, or anything else. It's been over a decade, but Lily has finally agreed to an interview, and the band is following her lead. So this book is basically Daisy Jones and the Six, but a horror book featuring the Antichrist. So when I figured that out, I had to get it. And also I got the audiobook because it's a full cast narration, just like Daisy Jones and the Six, which happens to be one of my favorite books of all time. And it just is a book written for someone like me. Like Daisy Jones and the Six was already a fantastic book, but now you're adding horror to it. It's got to be great, right? And I will say, obviously, I gave this book 5 stars, one of the best books that I've read all year. I will say the one downfall for this book is that it is very similar to Daisy Jones and the Six. And not story-wise, obviously, because it involves the Antichrist, but the way that it's written is just very similar to Daisy Jones and the Six, because it's kind of the same format, basically, where you're getting the band interviews, like someone is interviewing the band, and you're getting the book basically from the band members and people around the band, like producers and people who are at the concerts, music critics, all that kind of stuff. It's very similar in format. So that's kind of the one strike against this book, is that it's not exactly original. He basically just took Daisy Jones and the Six and formed a different kind of band, a punk band, which is very different from like 70s classic rock feel. and added the Antichrist into it, and it worked really well for me. It was a very fun book, probably one of the most fun books that I've read in the whole year of 2025 so far. It's definitely a book that I could see myself going back to reread sometime in the future and just have as much fun as I did the first time. And yeah, it's a 5-star book, just points off for not being extremely original. But overall, I can forgive that because I had so much fun with the book. So, probably my favorite book of the month of September and possibly a top 10 contender for the end of the year. All right, so that's all I got for you guys today. I had 1 DNF and I believe I had 13 finished books, so pretty decent. Although, I had that 1 DNF and then I had several kind of disappointing books or kind of mediocre books. But overall, great reading month. I had some fun rereads. I had a couple 5-star new favorites. So overall, it was a good month, just not as good as some of my previous months where it's just been like ridiculously good. But yeah, I had a fun time. Definitely let me know if you guys have read any of these books. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. Did you love or hate some of these books or thought they were meh, just like me? Also, what were your favorite books that you read in the month of September? Comment down below and we'll chat about it. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and stay subscribed for more content. I try to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for y'all. I've got the Bookish Drummer Discord down below where we've got tons of buddy reads and read-alongs happening all the damn time, including, obviously, the Long Walk Readathon, which is taking place right now. It's already too late to sign up, but we're having so much fun. We try to do a Stephen King themed readathon every year. So if you missed this one, next October we will have something cooked up. And speaking of Stephen King, we're also reading Revival and the Tommyknockers for the Stephen King Book Club. Mainly Revival. Check out the Tommyknockers at your own will. I also have my Patreon down below where, like I've mentioned, you can go support me there for as little as $1 a month or sign up for God tier for $7 a month, and you get all the additional perks, including having me read 2 additional books in the calendar year. I will read them and do dedicated book reviews for them right on the Bookish Drummer channel. So go sign up for that if you're interested. I also have my Amazon wishlist if you'd like to purchase me a book. And thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.